This week's guest, Jules White, starts our interview with a brilliant one line when asked what she does.
The thing I do is I help people to fall in love with sales.
If you struggle with sales or are interested in upping your sales game, you'll want to listen to this entire episode. Hi, I'm Vicki O'Neill, and this is Connect the Dots, the podcast for marketing and sales professionals who want to create a great experience for prospects and customers. Visit vickio'neill.com/webinar for details to join the Personas Masterclass if you want to fine-tune your marketing and sales strategy. Now, on today's episode with Jules, we dive into number one, how she helps people fall in love with sales through her live it, love it, sell it methodology. Number two, how telling her own stories helps make sales less scary. And number three, how her acronym helps bring humanity back into sales. You'll want to stay tuned till the end. We have a fun exercise and giveaway that you may be interested in. So let's get started with Jules. Hey, Jules, thanks so much for being with me today on this episode of Connect the Dots. Welcome.
Hello, Vicki. Lovely to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really good because obviously I'm in the UK and I just think it's so wonderful, don't you, to be able to connect from so far away.
Yes, I love technology. We never would have been able to do this if it wasn't for technology.
Exactly.
Well, why don't we go ahead and jump on in, and why don't you tell our listeners who you are and a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I'm Jules White, based in the UK, and the thing I do is I help people to fall in love with sales. So I am a sales coach. I work with clients one-to-one, but I also work with companies who have got sales teams, and I work with them on programs just to help them to look at connection in sales, because I'm very much about the human connection when I teach sales. And it comes from 30 plus years having been taught how to sell in that very process driven transactional way that I almost rebelled and decided to create my own methodology, which I call live it, love it, sell it.
I love it. We should all live it so that you can sell it.
Yes. Excellent.
Right?
Yeah, amazing.
Well, I love what you said first, because I think a lot of people struggle with sales or are intimidated by the concept of sales. And you had mentioned you help people fall in love with sales. So do you have a process, or how do you go about helping people fall in love with sales?
Yeah, so I kind of came up, as I said, with the live it, love it, sell it methodology. And then I thought that it's very much like a journey. So then I went on, you know how these things evolve, Vicky. And then I went on and I thought, oh, actually, this is a bit like a sales road trip, which of course is actually quite an American way to phrase it. But for me, it really worked. So it's a journey. So actually, live it is about your mindset. So are you fit to travel? Because actually, if we can't even travel that sales journey, then there's no point even trying to sell. So it starts all with the mindset, in all honesty. Then the love it is about planning the route. So this is the bit where we have to do that, else we won't reach our destination. So who's the ideal client? Why do we do what we do? Why do they want what we sell? And connecting all of the dots, which is one of your sayings.
I love it.
I know. We are very, very in tune. And then the sell it is about traveling the journey. So you're all ready, you're all set. So let's now travel and get to the destination, which is ultimately the sale.
And yeah, I really do love what you're doing. And there are so many people and so many businesses that could benefit from what you do, because obviously a business can't succeed or even thrive or even stay in business if they're not selling.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the heart of any business is sales. And of course, it's a dirty word for some people. It's the word, it triggers you and you suddenly get a bit scared and it feels horrible. And that's really the point, I think. It's probably from a bad experience you might have had from being sold very badly to. But what I want to do is help everybody to realize that life skills are sales skills. So actually we sell every day. We've been selling since we were small children. Remember the children, if any of you have got children, they are by far the best negotiators in the world. And it's interesting, isn't it? They have no fear. They know what they want and they set out to get it, kind of thing, don't they? But yeah, life skills are very much the skills I believe we use naturally when we sell, and that makes it much more human and unique.
Yeah, there was someone on LinkedIn recently who had made a comment that people are more afraid of selling than they are of dying.
Gosh, wow, that's
That to
really
me,
dramatic.
yeah, I was just like, it does seem kind of dramatic, but I bet if you asked people, they would probably be like, I want nothing to do with sales because there's that fear of rejection.
Yeah, I think fear of rejection. I think fear of being pushy. All of those stereotypical things that go when you've met that really bad salesperson in your life. I think that's where it all comes from. And I want to kind of debunk that, bust some myths around it, and just help people to get much more in tune with who they really are and have that human conversation, which makes it so much easier to sell, and we connect. As I said, it's lovely actually.
Yeah, it is. And I think people tend to, if they're on the receiving end of a salesperson, they don't like that feeling of being uncomfortable. So if that's the case, then the salesperson isn't really doing their job, or they haven't gotten to that point of doing their job yet, of actually helping that person feel comfortable in that conversation. And
Yeah.
then when that happens, that comfort happens, and that person on the receiving end is more open to the information, then they're more likely to hear, they're more likely to understand, and then they're more likely to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. So beautifully described, Vicky, and it's just true, isn't it? It's
It
just
is.
true.
It
Yeah.
really is. Now we just need to help people understand that, so that even on the receiving end, maybe they need to own part of that process and just know and have confidence in the fact that they can ask questions so that they feel comfortable.
Yes, and I think this is a good point because it's about asking questions on both sides. It's actually about the buyer being able to ask questions, but equally the person who's selling to ask questions that really do dig deep, so that they can step into the world of the buyer. Often what we do is we sort of dip our toe. We ask a few questions which we think are okay, and now we know enough. But actually, if we immerse ourselves a bit more, we really do start to connect with the emotional side of the buyer. Now,
Mhm.
that's when the magic happens, I think.
Exactly. And you can't get to that level of the emotions until you're actually asking questions. And it seems probably right now to us, we're probably like, that seems so natural to just have a conversation, because conversations are based on asking questions. I mean, most of the time, it's not two people just blurting out information that is completely irrelevant to the other person. They're asking
Yeah,
questions, and it's, back and forth. And that's all sales is. And I
yeah.
think it just gets, like you said, sales gets a bad rap, and, then people don't want anything to do with it.
No, and I often say to my clients, if you go and meet a new friend for coffee for the first time, not in business, in life,
Hmm.
think about what happens in that process. You won't just talk at them and tell them, well, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to find out about you. Then I'm going to tell you about me. And then we're going to see whether they've got something that you want. We don't do that in real life. So what I kind of want is for people to have that coffee with their friend, their new friend, and that becomes their sales process, because that's just much more conversational and natural.
Yes, it most certainly is. And you do a good job online as well with marketing yourself and what you do, either through example or just sharing your knowledge with your audience. So tell me a little bit about how you go about marketing yourself to get your ideal customers.
Yeah, and thank you. That's wonderful to hear that I do a good job. I think it's very much that I'm quite spontaneous and it comes from my heart, Vicky. So I tend to think about, well, actually, what are those core subjects that we get worried about, that we feel like scared about? And I talk about those. And very often it's around storytelling, which is, of course, another huge part of selling, is that telling stories. Be it my own experience in stories or a client's experience in stories. Those are the things that have much more impact. I think most of my social media and posts are usually based on storytelling of some sort, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it right there. Is selling is actually about telling stories. And
Yeah.
that's a way to actually get down to the emotional level that someone's going to make a purchase or make a decision on, and stories actually help navigate that process.
Yeah, very much so. And again, like you say, the connection, the emotional side of it, the fact that you resonate with stories, don't you? You know, most of us have had stories told to us since we were small children. So it's actually quite a nice place. It feels a warm place when you're having a story told to you. It's comfortable, isn't it? And it's
Yeah,
safe. So
very
there's a
much.
lot, yeah, there's a lot of psychology around storytelling, but equally it's that powerfulness of knowing that somebody truly understands where you're at. You know,
Yes.
that's the other thing that stories do for us.
Yes. And I think as a salesperson, that's important for us or whoever's selling to understand that if they have a story, find a way to share that as part of your process.
Yeah,
I think you
absolutely.
teach that as part of your overall program, correct? Whether it's an individual or it's a large corporation.
Yeah, very much. I really do. Because I think certainly in the larger corporations, they're a little bit fearful of telling stories. I think some of them find it a bit woo woo, as we say in the UK. Oh, no, you know, that's not very professional to start telling stories. But actually, it's one of the most powerful things you have, really, as a salesperson. So,
Yeah, large corporations, I think, just like the decision-making process internally, it takes a while to get everything up the ladder or to go
yeah.
through all of the gatekeepers. And very much like trying to change their perception or change their habits of how they're marketing their company is that storytelling is the new way, or it's been around for a while, but it's a way to build a better connection with your target audience. And if that's not something they've done in the past, it's probably a tough transition for them. Is that something that you found through your interactions with them?
Yeah, very much. Again, in the UK, it's the same story. It's the phrase we have here in the UK is "we've always done it like this," and that's kind of what you
Worst
hear.
phrase ever.
And it's like, well, okay, you know, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got or gotten, as you say across in America. And it's really interesting, isn't it? Of course, you can carry on doing it how you've always done it, but really let's listen to what we really want now. You know, in the market people want connection. I think especially now we're very digital, everything's very much online. We can do a lot of things without really having to meet up now, although thank goodness for this because we're quite far away, Vicky.
Yes, we
but
are.
but this still gives us an element of connection, and I think we as humans will always need that human connection. So stories are a great way to do it, but just be flexible, I think, in how you sell. Just be human, flexible, and, you know, step outside the box a little bit and just trust that we can do this in a conversation.
Yes, exactly. And are there certain types of businesses that you work with specifically, or do you work with all types of businesses?
Well, yeah, another good question, because sometimes you're perhaps industry expert, you know, or sometimes you're an expert in certain industries. I've worked in a huge different amounts of industries and sectors. So I'm more interested actually in the people than what industry or sector they work in, because that's, I guess, where I come from with the whole methodology. But I suppose if I had two kind of ideal clients, would be more what we call in the UK the SME market. So that's the small medium enterprise. These are the companies up to say 250 people. So they're not big corporations, but we have 90+% businesses in the UK that are SME businesses. So
Nice.
it's
Nice size
massive.
market.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
a massive market. So this market's really good for me because then I can work with quite tight sales teams who are entrepreneurial, and they really like my stuff. And then the other side of it is the entrepreneurs who are the solopreneurs who are working alone, and I do one-to-one coaching with them. So I love working with them too. So they're my kind of two ideal people that I want to work with, but not necessarily an industry sector.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what I do too, is I'm not in just one particular industry or sector.
Yeah.
It's, you know, wherever the need is. And a lot of times that outside perspective that you've experienced at another company can be helpful at this other company, even though it's not in the same industry.
I think that's such a good point, because it is, as you say, the outside view in. I remember going for a job once where they said they didn't want to give me the job because I hadn't worked in the industry. And I pushed and pushed for them to interview me, because I said to them, then this is a really good thing for you, because then I will come at it from a different angle. And I actually got the job. But I really had to dig deep to get an interview, because they just wanted to stay in that sector, you know, and get someone who'd been in the industry.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's bold to go outside the industry, but I think you get real good breadth of knowledge by doing it. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a lot of value that can be brought in just from having a different perspective.
Yeah, very much.
In your training, do you incorporate at all marketing and how teams can connect with, in like the bigger SMEs or just companies that have separate departments, like having the sales training be part of what marketing's doing, and maybe even bringing marketing people in to be part of what you're doing with the sales team?
Yeah, you know, one of the most interesting things is to get marketing people on sales courses, or back in the day, we used to go on buyer courses. So we used to try and, you know, get the training from the other side of the fence. But I think even more interesting is how now marketing, sales, and customer service are almost one thing. And I think you and I talked about this when we had our little virtual cuppa before, where really it's about customer experience now.
Yes.
So it absolutely needs to go across departments without question. I guess the challenge is to get the corporates and the leaders of the company to see that that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, and that's just telling the story to them, and that here's the value and the benefit of doing that. If you're only focusing on sales and you're not getting marketing and customer service in on that process, then you're going to have a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like that game back in the day when we were kids and you're playing telephone. And, you know, you're whispering in someone's ear and you're trying to get the same message from the first person to the last message, or the last person, and then the message is completely different than how it started. And
It's so
it's so
funny.
funny that people don't realize that that happens in companies if you don't have all the right people involved in the process from A to Z.
Yeah, totally. And it's the consistency that the buyer needs. It's the consistency that the client wants to see, because that's then reassuring, isn't it?
Yes, very much so.
Mm.
And I know you have done some public speaking, perhaps on a large stage that everyone will be familiar with.
Yes, I was so lucky, Vicky. I got a chance to do a TEDx talk in the UK. It was in Brighton, which in the UK is one of our largest TEDx's, actually in Europe, I think. So there's 1,500 people come to this TEDx. It's in a lovely, beautiful theatre setting. And I was called up because there was a lady who was very poorly and she couldn't make it. And I was called up by chance by the curator. And he said, you've got 7 days. Do you want a TEDx talk? And of course, I guess anyone listening would probably say yes, and then worry about it afterwards. So I did. I said yes. And then I had 7 days to get myself prepared to do my 15 minutes talk on the stage in Brighton. That was in October, and it was wonderful. What a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and 7 days, from what I've heard, is not a long time to prepare for a TEDx stage.
No, it's not. And I chose to tell my story, which I think was a great move, because I kind of knew my story. So I wasn't probably going to stumble like I might have done if I was going to do something quite sort of fact-based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was very much about my story and my journey. So that was a lovely thing to do, and massive response to it I've had, and it's inspired people, etc., which is one of the reasons you do it, isn't it, really?
Yes, exactly. And you just validated what you were saying earlier, is that by telling your story, that's your part of your sales process, which
Yeah.
resulted in a huge amount of people reaching out to you afterwards.
Yeah, and other speaking gigs, which was really exciting. So now I've begun a speaker journey really from then, and I'm now doing more and more speaking, which I love. So I feel very lucky that I was chosen.
That was going to be my next question, is if part of what you do is public speaking at different events, or just, are you staying in Europe, or are you traveling internationally for speaking opportunities as well?
Yeah, I would definitely travel for sure. I have been to Boston this year, but that was more to do some training work with a company as opposed to speaking. So that was just wonderful. That would be my first time in the US, which was just brilliant. I loved it. But yeah, I would love to, because the message really around my speaking is very much from my Live It, Love It, Sell It. So I'm really passionate about bringing that fresh approach to sales. So my keynotes usually geared around sales, and it's about putting humanity back into sales. That's kind of the key message. So
I love that, because part of what Mark Schaefer does in his book is putting the humanity back into companies or back into business.
brilliant.
So
Yeah.
you're just following along with that and doing the same thing from a sales perspective, which I applaud. Have you read
Yes,
the
thank
book
you.
yet?
No,
Marketing 1 Million?
I need to get that now. You'll have to send me the link, and I'll, yes, I
It
must.
sits by my desk. I love his book that much.
Yeah. And isn't it lovely when you've got a book that you can just keep with you, and it's almost that go-to place for you, you know? That's exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, the humanity part is actually an acronym. So I've created an acronym from humanity as well. So that feeds into my talks now. So I'm really starting to develop my talk, which is very exciting.
And what is your acronym?
Okay, so human is it's obviously humanity. So the H is human, then it's unique, mindset, ask, never assume, work with integrity, build trust, and it's not about you.
I like that.
So,
And whoever heard that for the first time, there'll be a test at the end of this.
yeah. Well, I was testing myself too, really, because I've only just developed it, but it kind of follows the Live It, Love It, Sell It road trip as well. So it all sort of links in. So then I can pick various letters to form the stories around my talk. So it's quite nice. I can chop and change then. So my talk's slightly different.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember them as you were saying them. And I'm like, the average human who can only remember 3 things at a time. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to go back to this and write these down.
I'll send you a picture of it, because I got it in a lovely, lovely picture. So I'll send you it.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'd love to have it.
Yeah, I will.
If there was one thing that you wanted people to remember about the Live It, Love It, Sell It mantra, what would it be?
I think for me, it's about remembering just to be you, because I feel like we've potentially been trained to not be us in sales. So I almost want to untrain everyone who's ever been trained, Vicky. But I want people to trust in who they are, because everyone's unique, and it's the uniqueness that's the thing that people will connect with and buy.
Right.
And I think that's just very important. So it's almost that having that courage to be true you. That was my big message with Live It, Love It, Sell It.
Okay. I like that takeaway too. And that's something that John Asperian and I were talking about not too long ago, just how sometimes there are people who are one way online and then they're different in person or through direct messages. And the message to that was people need to be the same way regardless what platform they're on or how they're communicating with people. And that really just boils down to being yourself.
Yeah, and I think we chatted through that thread on that post. I think that's how we met. I'm sure I recognize it, because one of the other things I was saying probably around that time was, if you met me, you would recognize me from how I write my posts and how I do my videos and how I write my emails. And that's what I want. I want somebody to meet me in real life, and it feels like they already knew me from my online persona, if you like, because it's the same person. I also think that if you're going to say something online, you should be able to say it to someone's face.
Exactly. Don't hide behind the screen. Don't hide behind your keyboard. Just say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If there was one thing that you wanted people to know about you that maybe they don't know about, what would that be?
Wow, that's a good question, Vicky. You see, you don't get told you're going to ask these questions. What do they want to know about me? Well, I guess something a bit unconnected to sales would be quite cool, wouldn't it, really? I play clarinet and saxophone. How about that one?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's impressive. You and Ella need to get together because she's a singer. So you
Oh,
could
wow.
play and she could sing.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, that
Oh,
would be
I
amazing.
love saxophone. That's like I can't play it, but the sound, that's my favorite instrument sound.
Yeah, it is beautiful. I played clarinet from when I was 7. So that's kind of my first love. And then when I was 21, I said, right, I'm buying a saxophone. That's it. And then I had a few lessons and it was quite an easy transition. And then I've got a beautiful black nickel alto sax. And then I've still got my clarinet from 40 years ago. So
Oh, wow, that's
yeah,
impressive.
yeah, I love music.
If you had one sitting next to you, I would ask you to play something for us.
Oh,
But
unfortunately, I
yeah,
don't.
you're like, thank God I don't. The pressure. All right. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about you and what you do?
Well, I think the one thing I probably didn't mention, I might have done, but is that Live It, Love It, Sell It is a book. So obviously, if they're interested in the methodology, it's a great entry point to find out what it is I'm talking about and what I believe in. And I know it's on Amazon.com in America. There's a couple of reviews on as well, which is very cool. But I would love people to look at it, read it, and maybe have it on their desk as their reference point, just like you've mentioned. That would be
That
great.
might be my next one.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
include
but that
that
would,
too. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that I was just going to say that would be lovely for people to know. That would be very cool.
But I think it's something that if everyone has such a huge fear of sales, that it actually might be a great book to have on everyone's desk, just as a
Yeah.
reminder, and then as a resource that they can pick up just to start learning, start retraining their brain, and start becoming more comfortable with sales and the sales process.
Yeah, and there's 24 exercises throughout the book in various places, which are really great to revisit and just get yourself back to what are your core values, why do you do what you do, and those things, which I think we all need to do now and again. So,
Yes, I agree.
yeah.
And I'll include the link to the book. And then also, where can people connect with you online?
So, I mean, LinkedIn's a massive place for me, as you know, Vicky, because that's where we met. So, LinkedIn is definitely a great place to connect with me. Obviously, I've got my website, which is Live It, Love It, Sell It. It's obviously .co.uk because we're in the UK, but I've also got a speaker website now as well. So, I'll perhaps send you the links and you can pop them all in.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll include them in the show notes for this episode. And anything else?
No, I don't think so. I just hope they've enjoyed listening to us chat about sales in a refreshing way like we have.
Exactly. I think they will.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Connect the Dots. I greatly appreciate you being here, Jules, and sharing your story, your mission, and your accomplishments with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, what does the acronym HUMANITY stand for? I told you I'd ask later. My 3 takeaways from my conversation with Jules are: number 1, the Live It, Love It, Sell It methodology is based on human connections. If you're looking for a place to start in loving sales, that's the place to start. Number 2, when you incorporate storytelling into your conversations with clients, you are creating a human connection with something familiar to them about an experience, which helps connect the dots in the marketing and sales process. Number 3, be yourself. It's the easiest and most reliable thing that you can be, whether you're in sales, marketing, or any other specialty. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a fun activity for a chance to win a free copy of Jules' book, Live It, Love It, Sell It. If you want to participate, check out the details under the show notes for episode 34 or by navigating to vickyoneil.com/34. It was such a pleasure speaking with Jules and learning about her mission to help people fall in love with sales. All the links mentioned are in the show notes, as well as a link to her speaker site. Until next time, I'm Vicky O'Neill. Make today great.